This video brought to you by Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika. Get ready to smile.
Hello, baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. We are now 2 weeks removed from the trade deadline of this season, and a trade deadline that many Braves fans would tell you was underwhelming. The additions of Tyler Mahle, Brent Suter, and Lane Thomas were, overlooked by many Braves fans, hoping for something more. Braves fans and folks like me that cover this team really closely, sometimes we do feel like we know what the Braves need more so than the front office does. And I think it's a fair time to question, were we wrong and was Alex Anthopoulos and his front office correct by not going out and getting a Logan Webb, Robbie Ray, Sonny Gray, or some other starting pitcher that would have slotted behind Chris Sale? Well, again, that did not happen. None of that happened. The rumor is that the Braves were in on Jacob deGrom. The deal was done. All it had to do was be signed on by the man himself, deGrom. And that did not happen. He blocked the no trade. And, of course, here we are. The Braves did not pivot. They did not go out and make a last-minute deal with Casey Mize like the Padres did. They did not go out and get Robbie Ray or Hunter Green or anybody that, really was going to make us as followers of this team satisfied with the trade deadline. That said, again, it's time to question if we were wrong and if Alex Anthopoulos was correct. The Braves, even though it didn't seem like it, did acquire a starting pitcher in Tyler Mahle, and this is not one of those sexy blockbuster moves like Casey Mize was deadline day or like many others were on deadline day. It wasn't even, I would say, the most important move that the Braves made in the eyes of many fans. I think most people were excited about Lane Thomas at the time, and I will tell you, it's again not a move that's going to satisfy a fan base. It's not a move that's going to impress the talking heads on MLB Network or the talking heads here on YouTube, including myself. I was clearly disappointed, as were many of the fans. I had a live stream that night. For the final 3 hours, we were waiting to see if the Braves were going to pull something out of their hat and get a starting pitcher that could slot behind Chris Sale in the rotation, and it didn't happen. So, I will tell you, I've spent the last 2 weeks looking at Tyler Mahle, looking at some of the other starting pitchers that were in the deadline race, and I want to revisit the trade deadline through the lens of, were we wrong and was Alex Anthopoulos correct by not selling the farm and getting a Skubal or getting deGrom or getting Logan Webb or Sonny Gray or Robbie Ray? When it comes to deGrom, again, the deal, if the rumors are to be believed, the deal was done. So I can't really criticize Anthopoulos for that specific deal because he tried and deGrom blocked it. That's through no fault of Alex Anthopoulos. It's through no fault of the Rangers. It's completely up to the player if they want to do that. Now, at the time, I did criticize him for not pivoting. Why not go get a Casey Mize? Why not go get another starting pitcher at the deadline? You still had an hour or two, if I'm not mistaken, at the deadline to make a move, and it just did not happen. If you watch that live stream, you'll see my disappointment. I mean, it's very clear. I could not believe because, again, I had talked myself into believing that it was a given that the Braves would go out and get a starting pitcher. So let's talk about the assets that they did get. Brent Suter, number one, I think has been a fine addition to the bullpen. He's not a solidified closer by any means. I don't think he's even a seventh or eighth inning guy, but he's been a very suitable arm to help rest guys ahead of the postseason in October. This is a guy that's going to really help us down the stretch. I liked that move. I just didn't like that it was one of the only few moves that the Braves made. The addition of Lane Thomas, I think, has been, really solid for the most part. I was at the ballpark the other night as a fan for the first time in a few years, and he hit a home run that landed 10 feet in front of me. That was pretty cool. And I do think he's going to platoon well in the outfield. But the real addition that is going to make the difference, if the difference is to be made, is Tyler Mahle. Because Over the past 2 starts that he's had in Atlanta, he's been able to toss 6 innings in both, only allowing 1 run between the two across 12 innings. That's good for a .75 ERA, a sub-1 ERA for Mahle. I mean, could it have gone any better for Alex Anthopoulos following the trade deadline? You know, a guy that was getting all kinds of criticism from everywhere on Twitter, so much so that the Braves rolled out the PR team he sat down to do the interview with Wiley Ballard. Great interview, by the way. We're going to listen to a few pieces of that throughout this video to kind of put all of this into context. But they rolled it out to kind of explain to Braves country why it didn't happen, because we all kind of expected it. I think they were hoping to get something done, but that's how much the Braves knew what we were thinking, and they still believe that this team has a chance to win. That said, am I a believer in this plan / idea? Not yet. You're going to have to ask me come October, prior to the postseason. I'll let you know what I think. Because let's face it, the Braves were definitely looking to add more at the trade deadline, I believe. Mahle, to me, seemed like a move that was a just-in-case move, which it's been a solid move, but they were hoping to get an elite player, and that is a quote from Alex Anthopoulos, an elite difference maker. And I don't believe, all due respect to him, I don't believe Mahle is that guy. I think DeGrom could have been that guy in the eyes of the Braves. I think maybe a couple other guys that were in the mix, Skubal would have been one. Obviously, he went to the Dodgers. And the Braves, I don't think were ever really going to compete with that trade package. A lot of people look at, what the Braves could have given up versus what the Dodgers could have given up. And I hear you, but the Dodgers have the ability, unlike a lot of teams in baseball, to trade those 3 guys that they traded and bring in 3 more very, very soon, right? They have a lot more wealth of prospects because most of their guys that are currently in Major League Baseball are former free agents, right? Freddie Freeman, free agent. Shohei Ohtani, free agent. A lot of their guys are. Very few, came from within the organization, unlike the Braves where they had their big crop of talent, 5, 8, 9 years ago, right? If you go back to Acuna and Albies and Dansby even, and Austin Riley, those guys came from within. They were the big prospects. All due credit to the Dodgers, they handle, minor leagues better than anybody in baseball, but that is the situation. They can freely give up prospects a lot easier than most other teams, and the Braves have to be more careful because even though this is the first year as a contender that the Braves have had prospects to give, those prospects that I'm mentioning that were likely in that package, Cam Caminiti, Owen Carey, Hartman, John Hill, all those guys, you could add more to the list if you want, could very well help the Braves next year and beyond. Drake Baldwin was a prospect not that long ago, right? That's kind of been Anthopoulos' point throughout all of this. That said, it is a disappointment that the Braves did not make it happen. Mahle did not impress me in the stat book when we got him. He had a 5.13 ERA. But when you look at it closer, he had closer to a 3 ERA if you take out one start against the Padres. He gave up 5 earned runs in that game and obviously made his ERA appear worse than what he actually is as a pitcher normally, at least this year. But even in that rough start, he still pitched 5 2/3. Yes, he gave up 5 earned runs, but he still gave length, and that is so important this time of the year. Mahle, I don't believe, will be a starting pitcher in the postseason. He could be, but I don't believe that will happen. Certainly not a game 1, 2, or 3 if everybody remains healthy. But at the same time, he could make a difference for the postseason by covering innings, by lessening the toll on the starting pitching staff, especially with the likes of Chris Sale, keeping him healthy, keeping Martin Perez healthy, and keeping, other guys healthy as well. The addition of A.J. Smith-Shawver today, that could be very good, but you don't want to bring Smith-Shawver back and immediately send him back to the IL because he's pitching too much or he's having to cover too many innings. It also helps your pen because, all due respect to Grant Holmes, Holmes has a habit of not making it past the 5th. Has he been better since the deadline? Yes. Will it last? Time will tell. We don't know. It's not a guarantee. But having a guy like Tyler Mahle who can cover innings, if nothing else, is a bonus for this team. And I think it will help them as they move closer to the postseason and may even keep them rested during the postseason while winning ball games as we go. Because again, Mahle's not been bad. It's not like we have Jesse Chavez on the mound eating up innings just for the sake of eating up innings. You have a guy in Mahle who's tossed 12 innings so far and only given up 1 run. That's a winnable pitcher right there most days. Now, has he faced what we're going to face in the postseason? No. How will that go? Time will tell. But he has been able to win some games in a Braves uniform, and that's saying something. And he's pitched well, and credit is deserved for that. Now, again, that's credit towards Mahle, but what about Alex Anthopoulos? Well, here's what he had to say about the addition of Tyler Mahle and why the Braves took a chance on him.
Strike thrower, can go deep in a game. Since he's come back from the IL with a hamstring, he's throwing the ball a lot better. His velocity is up from the start of the year. His numbers against right-handers, we think there's room for improvement there. We think he's going to get better, and we think he's throwing the ball much better since the end of June. And sometimes on the surface, you look at some of these performances and you think, well, that's who they're going to be going forward. But at this time of year, you're looking for upside. Slivers, indicators, guys that are doing well, guys that might turn the corner. We're going to ultimately find out over the next 2 months. But he's someone that we're excited to add.
Again, that was Alex Anthopoulos speaking on the addition of Tyler Mahle. And again, with Mahle, I think the big thing in all of what Alex Anthopoulos said, he started out with strike thrower, can go deep in a game. That is the most important part of Tyler Mahle right now. And as good as Grant Holmes is, especially out of the pen, the Braves haven't decided whether or not they want to put him in the bullpen. They haven't decided that they want to leave him in the rotation. But today's edition of A.J. Smith-Shawver does make things interesting, especially with the addition of Tyler Mahle as well. Because as it stands, you have Chris Sale, Martin Perez, Bryce Elder, Tyler Mahle, and then that 5 spot, Grant Holmes / A.J. Smith-Shawver. I have to believe that Smith-Shawver is a starter in this rotation. They did not bring him back, I don't believe, to be in the bullpen. I think that guy is a starter. He's pitched well in the minors. I believe he was the International Minor League Player of the Week because he gave up 1 hit across 5 innings the other day. This is a guy coming back that's going to be a starter, and I think it's easier for AJ to come back and be a starter in a role that he's familiar with as opposed to being a reliever, because the thought process is completely different. And when you're coming off of injury, coming in and having clean innings, and having a routine as opposed to being called upon out of the pen is a big difference. But being called up out of the pen to throw multiple innings is a role that Grant Holmes is very, very familiar with. And I believe that is the role that fits him best. I think it's a matter of time before you see Grant Holmes head to the bullpen more often. But the Braves do have to be careful because they don't want what happened with Reynaldo Lopez, where he moved him to the pen and his usage went way down and he hasn't really been the same since. Now, I have said since this past offseason, since last year's trade deadline, that I believe that the Braves, if they do acquire a starting pitcher, should slot Grant Holmes back in the bullpen, because if you remember, Grant Holmes was an absolute weapon out of the pen. You could call him in. He could cover 1 inning. He could get you out of a jam. He could cover 2 to 3 innings if you want him to. And yeah, you might have to rest him the next day, but that's a guy that can cover innings late, and that is a very valuable asset to have in the playoffs. If you have a 4-run lead and you want to bring in Grant Holmes to cover the 6th, 7th, and 8th before shutting it down in the 9th, right? It's a valuable asset to have if you're down in the playoffs, right? And you don't want to burn through your pitching. It's a valuable asset to have in a lot of different ways. But I believe with this addition of A.J. Smith-Shawver, that's a matter of time. Now, the Braves aren't going to come out and say that that's the plan, right? Walt Weiss was asked about it, and he said, look, Grant's been solid for us in the rotation. I don't want to just take that opportunity away from him, and you don't. But there comes a point where a decision's going to have to be made. Maybe it's, Grant Holmes is going to be a starter in the NLDS, but maybe not in the NLCS or going forward, right? Because in the NLCS and World Series, you have a 7-game stretch that you have to cover, and you may need him in the pen after a Smith-Shawver start or after a Bryce Elder start or a Martin start. You may need him to kind of, stretch in between the 5th inning and the 7th inning to cover for your 7, 8, and 9 guys, right? Your Dylan Lee and your Rice Sells and maybe Robert Suarez if he comes back. So there's a lot to look at there, and they're not going to tell you anything now. They're going to view it as a competition, and really this is all kind of dependent on what A.J. Smith-Shawver looks like when he comes back tonight. So we'll have to wait and see. But again, I have thought that since the jump that Grant Holmes should be in the pen. Not a knock on him. It's more so the weapon that he becomes when he does join the bullpen. Having that 1-2 punch of Chris Sale, Martin Perez is encouraging. The 3 spot to me is where things get dicey, right? Bryce Elder's had a terrific year. He's found that 2023 magic. And he's been able to pitch deeper this year than he did in 23, right? He's been able to be more consistent in the latter half. That said, even with all of his excellent performances, there's been plenty of times where he hasn't been able to get outs, right? He's been hit around. And with a guy like Elder who pitches to contact, that's going to happen. It's not indicative of who he is as a pitcher. It's just the facts, right? Greg Maddux got hit pretty good too here and there. And Bryce, look, he's 8-7. He's got right around a 500 record. He's got a 4.03 ERA, decent but not great, especially when you compare pitching staffs across the National League, especially over there in LA. June was a rough month for Elder. That's where his ERA really kind of ballooned. The real question becomes, we never really know which version of Bryce Elder we're going to get. He's very 50-50, just like his record, right? He's an 8-7 record. He's got a positive. He's in the green on win-loss record, but it's very 50-50. And with Elder, he's either on or off. There's no doubt about that. But in the postseason, to me, you don't have to have 5 great starting pitchers. But I do think you need 3 that can post up. I do think that. Chris Sale, no doubt about it. Martin Perez, I know his last start wasn't particularly great last night, but I think Martin can lock in and be that guy if called upon in the postseason. But having a guy like Elder that can throw 5 to 6 innings certainly is an asset, but having guys like Holmes and Shawver that can also come in and cover innings is a big plus, not to mention the addition of Tyler Mahle, right? And I don't want to get too off from that. I must throw in the caveat that if Smith-Shawver comes back and is dealing, there is a chance that he could be the number 3 starter in the playoffs. And that kind of throws, things kind of haywire, right? If Shawver is on, you may not want Bryce Elder pitching. At the end of the day, I would say Sale and Martin are guaranteed starters, but after that, all bets are off when it comes to the postseason. We have seen how aggressive Walt Weiss is in the win today mentality, right? Tomorrow, we'll worry about after today. But that is a great mindset to have, especially in the playoffs, because every game matters in the playoffs. In the regular season, yes, every game matters, but it exponentially increases come playoff time. And if your bullpen needs rest, having starters that can cover innings is going to be very valuable to have. And that, to me, is why this Mahle move makes a lot of sense. Maybe the Braves didn't need a frontline starter. Do I think they did? Do I think they could have used one? Absolutely. Would it have been nice? You bet. Was it worth losing the farm? Only time will tell. Anthopoulos made the call. Rumor is, again, that DeGrom was headed to Atlanta. Anthopoulos, if rumors are to be believed, was going for that and was willing to trade an X amount of prospects to make that happen, but DeGrom put the stop to it. We'll never know what the deal was. We'll never know how it would have gone. But safe to say that we would have lost quite a few prospects in that move. The Braves did not pivot. They did not move to another starting pitcher, but maybe they didn't view other starting pitchers that were in the mix as assets.
And that's the one where you really have a hard time with balancing the short and the long term. So you have to do what you feel is right. You can say, I'm not worried about it, but you're trying to win a World Series each year, but the key is each year putting yourself in a position. So you're going to thread the needle. And look, I will say this, for certain players, you're going to open it up and make everybody available, And then for some other players, you might take one guy off the table, maybe two guys off the table. But elite difference-making guys, you're pretty much going to make all of them available. It doesn't guarantee you're going to get a deal done, though.
What if Cam Caminiti becomes what Max Fried became, right? What if Eric Hartman becomes the next Ronald Acuna or the next Austin Riley type of bat, right, at a young age? What if John Hill is the next Ozzie Albies, right? His contract's coming up soon. It's a tough job, and you only look good if the moves work out. But in terms of, is Double-A right? Are we wrong? Is Double-A right? Well, there's a few ways to look at that. Tyler Mahle's performances over the last couple of weeks doesn't prove any of that. It doesn't say yes or no. The impact that Brent Suter has on this bullpen doesn't say yes or no. If the Braves win the World Series this year, you could say that Alex Anthopoulos was correct. But at the same time, if those guys that we didn't trade, Cam Caminiti, John Hill, Eric Hartman, Owen Carey, Owen Murphy, J.R. Ritchie, a lot of names there. If any of those guys become pivotal members of the team, you can always argue that while, yes, we could have done a deal, we would have lost 10 years of this player, or we would have lost 10 years of these players, right? We don't know who the next guy is going to be. And to me, short term doesn't outweigh the long term. Long term shouldn't necessarily outweigh the short term. It depends where you are as an organization. The Braves view themselves as a team that can contend every year. And as long as that's the case, long term matters just as much as short term. That's the way Alex Anthopoulos is going to view it. And I know there's a contingency of people out there, and I understand, but there's a contingency of people that when the Braves didn't make the deal at the deadline, you went, well, that's it. They're done. They're toast. As soon as they get to a wild card series or as soon as they get to a division series, they're done, right? They may not even get the bye. Who knows? But in 2023, everyone thought the Braves couldn't lose, right? And then they did. They lost pretty early in the postseason, if I remember correctly. In 2021, no one gave the Braves a chance. And then it all happened. So you never know. It's all about getting a trip to the dance. What you do after that is anybody's guess. But it'll be interesting to see what happens this postseason. We're going to be following it the entire way. We would love for you to join us. So please do, if you have not already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and like this video to help us get it out there to other Braves and baseball fans. The other thing I will tell you, as much as it'll be interesting to watch this upcoming postseason, it's also going to be interesting to watch the careers of Caminiti, Hartman, John Hill, Owen Carey, and all the other guys that we could have lost at this year's deadline. So it'll be interesting to see if Double-A made the right call, not at the end of this year, but maybe years down the road. With that said, guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time right here at On Deck. This video has been brought to you by Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.